I want to ask you, Teddy, about the Mike Tyson biopic and Jamie Foxx playing Mike Tyson. A lot of excitement about what that might look like. As someone who was, in a lot of ways, part of the Mike Tyson story, I mean, how do you feel about a Mike Tyson movie being made?
They've made them before. I mean, there was a couple. Uh, there was a Mike Tyson story. Jesus, 25 years ago was made. I don't remember who made it. Um, but I
Well,
remember
this
the
will
one.
probably be the biggest one. This will probably be like the Hollywoodization of Mike Tyson for, if not the first time, the most significant time.
I mean, you knew it was coming. I think to a certain extent. I mean, he's a he's a curious. He's a public figure. He was a star. He was a heavyweight champ. He was one of the most recognizable faces in the world, and definitely in the world of sports. When he was on top, he was on the cover of your magazine, Sports Illustrated, Kid Dynamite. I remember that, Kid Dynamite. And you know, so he he had that career, but he had more than that career. He had the it factor. He had the wow, with the knockouts. Um, he's one of those. He has persevered because his name has stayed out there because he's got the one thing that sometimes even the great athletes don't have, that that curiosity, that just that it's even a morbid curiosity, and it's not because it's Teddy Atlas saying it because he was with him and what happened happened. No, it's a fair description. There's a morbid curiosity, and always has been about Tyson. You know, well, at first it started off with, this kid that came from where he came from, and the story with the old man, and can he become, you know, can he keep the old man alive? And then the old man dies, and then, can he keep knocking everyone out? He's 18, 19 and 0 with 19 knockouts. And that's we don't have great attention spans. So you knew that you could be watching a 10-second fight as better chance than watching a 12 round. And that was okay with people. That was okay. Nobody was disappointed because
Mhm.
you were going to see sensation. You're going to see bang, lightning come out of the sky. And when lightning comes out of the sky and you see that light show, it only lasts a couple minutes, but you remember it. You never walk away saying that lightning show didn't last long enough. No, it was a lightning show, and that's
Mhm.
what he was. And people loved it, and then it morphed, it transitioned into something else. I'm I'm trying to argue with myself. Is it fair to say, coming from me, a bit of a freak show? And I'm saying, am I saying this? I try to pride myself that I say things based on my professional beliefs, not on personal, pushing or nudging. So I think I'd say that if I had something to do with Tyson or I didn't have something to do with him, that it became a bit of a wacky show, you know, uh, a bit of Jerry Springer on steroids. And people were kind of watching it like this, like part of you almost like don't want to see it, but you got to see it,
Mhm.
like biting someone's ears off. What else? Saying I'm going to eat your children at a press conference, and uh, uh, I mean, what else? What else could come of this? And I don't think it was connected to an athletic performance anymore. I think it was connected to what he had been, what he was now, and what crazy thing might happen that we might get to see.
Mhm.
And I think that there there will be a lot of people, even when this little video came out with him, which is a little silly, but he's got the DNA of an athlete. that just doesn't go to bed. He's got that. He's got those genes. So when he decides to hit the pads, even at 53 or whatever he is, it's going to be pretty good, especially if nobody's hitting back. It's going to be pretty good. If you took Hank Aaron, the great Hank Aaron, the great Willie Mays at 53, and you put them in a batting cage, they'd be hitting line drives.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be hitting long balls. But you wouldn't be saying, I want to see him, up against Verlander. You wouldn't be saying that. But boxing's a little different. And with Tyson, it's a little different. And people's imagination. And I think that's the greatest thing. Tyson was a great catalyst for the imagination. He really was. He had a little imagination. Like Cuss used to talk about, I start give me a spark and I'll make it into a flame. With Tyson, just give me a little imagination and I'll make it into a feature crazy movie. I'll run with it. And you can run with it. And I think that a lot of people will be curious to see because they remember when he was knocking guys out. They remember all the craziness, and they want to take a peek. You want to, if you heard something was coming to town, in a special show, you'd probably want to take a peek to see, and that's what it is. People want to take a peek at him, like what? Even the ones that didn't see him, they heard about it. Let me take a peek at him. Let me see what he looks like. And so it would be more surprising if a movie was never made, because people just saw. I know it's a different situation, but they saw with the Michael Jordan all the attention it got. Well, you could argue he was Michael Jordan of boxing, and
Mm-hmm.
for that period of time. And so when they're going to do a movie, a documentary, whatever it is, on a person who captured the audience, his audience of his sport to that level, you're going to have interest. And with Tyson, I think it crosses over beyond the boxing, because there'll be wives out there that say, "Oh yeah, let me watch that." Me, the guy you guys were all drinking beers and you were screaming and everything that he bit somebody's ear off. Let me see how did those wires get put in where he became that? Let me take a look. And that's a big part of it too, because I think we have a Frankenstein syndrome in this country. We like to see monsters made. We might not want them in our living room unless they're on television. But we do want to say we were around when they walked the earth. we
Mm-hmm.
want to say, yeah, I was around when Tyson. Yeah, I was around when he was around. Yeah, I saw him one time out somewhere, and he's a scary dude.
You're right, Teddy. You're right. Nobody ever left a Tyson event disappointed, no matter how quick the fight went. I mean, one of my earliest memories was watching Tyson's first fight out of prison against Peter McNeely. I'm a Boston guy. Peter was known in this area, and I remember vividly seeing when they squared off in the middle of the ring with the referee's instructions, watching Tyson's eyes go back and forth on Peter and seeing Peter kind of smile, this nervous smile. It's like in that moment, I think Peter realized what he was in for. Like what, and that was just Tyson. That was the powerful presence that he was.
What you just said is interesting, because I'm going to take that, what you just said, and I'm going to raise it by saying, yeah, very true. And Tyson knew exactly what he was doing. Tyson knew that I could end this fight without throwing a punch because he understood that because he was a guy who's scared. We all are. It's just a matter of what we do for a living, how we control it, and to what level we control it, and or does it control us? And Tyson's a guy who's been intimidated his whole life. I know that sounds crazy. People are going to be, what? What? Hello? Yeah, what did he just say? He could hide it better than a lot of people because he had physicality, DNA that very few people get. Very few. So he could hide it better. But there's a kid who, on his own words, would say when he was in Brownsville growing up that, he didn't have a father at home and he was out there and like a lot of kids in the inner city sometimes. And he would hide in between walls of abandoned buildings so that the rough guys in the neighborhood, the bad guys, the rough guys, they couldn't get to him. They couldn't find him. That's a different level. So he understands what it is to feel intimidated, to feel like something's being torn away from you. And he understands what it feels to do it to somebody, what the effects could be on somebody, how it can leave somebody empty, destroy somebody. I mean, he understood that from where he came from. I remember one time I had him in a Junior Olympic. It was in Queens, somewhere off. Pretty good memory, 35 years, my God, whatever. It was somewhere in Queens, and we were fighting in the regional Junior Olympics to go to the nationals. And we're warming up in the hallway, and I got him warming up, and the other guy's down on the other end of the hallway. He knows he can see him. So right away, whatever I do now is going to register with this guy. It's going to influence this guy. So he went over and he felt the wall. I noticed it. I'm in the business. I got to notice these things. But I noticed. I watched him. I said, what is he doing? And I thought to myself, I think I know what he's doing. And he looked at me. He went back. He felt the wall. And then he waited about 30 seconds, waited for the guy where he knew the guy was looking. He went up to the wall, bang, and he punched right through it. You know what he was feeling? He was feeling to see if it was plasterboard or if it was concrete. Genius. Genius in that world. Genius. The fight was over. I was going to yell, somebody help that guy. He might need a hand getting up into the ring. I mean, it was over. And so the point I'm making, and it's the right point, I think, is he always understood that world, but he suffered from that world too. He suffered when somebody stood up to him. Mm-hmm. It was like the gig is up. Because when you depend, and I've said this, I said years ago, the greatest weakness of Tyson is it's not physical. The greatest weakness is that he depends on other people to be weak for him to be strong. We should never do that in life. We should never do that in life. But life is large. Mm-hmm. It's very large. And it encapsulates a lot. So he, when he could cover what he didn't have mentally with his physical ability, you never knew there was a weakness there. But when somebody would stand up to him, you could see it, and people don't understand it, and that's another thing, another part of the enigma. Why, people? I mentioned Frankenstein earlier. people want to see how Frankenstein got created. It's cute. It's interesting. How do you take a guy that Teddy just talked about that's as good as any, probably as any heavyweight in the history of the sport has ever been physically, punch with either hand, probably harder or as hard as any heavyweight, put together speed and quickness, probably more, as much as any heavy, other than Ali, but it's different, different. Ali did it boxing, Tyson did it moving forward. So obviously different approach, but nobody's ever had the combination of power and speed. I mean, it was kind of like, if you had to make a comparison, kind of like it would be like a large Pacquiao. I mean, Pacquiao, unbelievable speed and power when he was Pacquiao. Although he's still doing pretty damn good for an old guy, but he's pretty amazing. But I mean, what a great genetics of speed and power. Tyson had that as a big guy, and and then on top of it, he had the Sonny Liston approach. He developed that. We just talked about it. Sonny Liston was the first great intimidator. Tyson watched Sonny Liston. Matter of fact, when we were in the Nationals in Denver, Colorado, for his first Nationals, in the Junior Olympics, there were the imagination. Again, there were people on the bus, kids on a bus that were part of just like us. We would sit by ourselves. No accident. I went along with it because I knew what we were doing. I should have been ashamed of myself, scaring the crap out of these poor kids. But we would sit over here. They'd all be here, and you'd hear them talking. That's Sonny Liston's nephew, and they believed it. That's Sonny Liston's nephew, and Tyson would be eating it up. Like he would sit there like. But then every once in a while, he look at me, like a little smile, like, look at these knuckleheads. But this is part of the game because you grab anything you can in this business. I mean, you don't think that Randy Johnson, the great pitcher, that he didn't throw it at your head and then throw one that went over and made you think, does he have control? You shouldn't be up there ready to hit, worrying about if a guy has control, should you? No, you shouldn't. But he put that into your head, and then he made a joke out of it. He had a commercial. What did he call it, Mr.
Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but yeah.
My son, my son got a kick out of it.
It's kind of funny, I'm reminded of a story Buddy McGirt told me when he was training Clifford Etienne, and he was saying before he fought Tyson, Clifford was all hyped. He was ready to go. He thought he was going to win. And then he gets to the ring. Tyson's music plays. Tyson gets in the ring, takes off the white T-shirt, throws it, or the white towel, throws it down in front of Cliff. And Buddy's words were, you could see Cliff's spirit leave his body in that moment. That was the moment the fight was lost right there. But let me ask you this about one debate I have with people, and you're a good person to discuss this with because you saw Tyson very early on. Tyson, no question, is a Hall of Famer because of what he did for boxing. I'm not necessarily convinced he was a Hall of Fame fighter, mostly because the resume isn't deep with quality wins. And there's almost an assumption that I think people make that if he didn't go to jail, he would have continued his rise. I'm not convinced, Teddy, that he would have beaten early 90s George Foreman, or he would have beaten early 90s Evander Holyfield, or Riddick Bowe, or Lennox Lewis in those days. I mean, do you believe, you said that Tyson, because of the speed and power, one of the greats who could do that. Do you believe Tyson is a great fighter historically? Do you believe his career would have ascended had he not gone to prison?
You're a pretty smart boxing writer because a lot of people get led by this, because you could get led by the ear, the nose, because of what I said, the power, the speed, and then you could just assume, oh, if he didn't get in trouble, oh, if he would have broke Marciano's record, he would have been the greatest. But if we're in a court of law, there's something called evidence. It's a son of a gun, that evidence, but you have to have evidence, and you have to deal with evidence on the other side when they're prosecuting you. And the evidence in this case, pretty simple. I don't have his record in front of me, but you'll help me. I'm close. He had 5 fights where he had to overcome something. 5. Where I always say that it's not a fight until there's something to overcome. Up until then, it's an exhibition. It's a physical boxing exhibition of your talent, of your speed, your ability, your technique. It's an exhibition. It doesn't become a fight until there's something to overcome. Resistance, something to overcome. Tyson has been in fights 5 times where there was something to overcome, and he failed all 5. Bang. I know people don't want to hear that. I know that I will be getting a call from Jamie Foxx. And I like Jamie. I think he's great. But I will be getting a call from them saying, hey, Teddy, can you, they don't want that. I get it. I understand. But we're in a courtroom right now. Mm-hmm. And it's just about the rule of law. It's about evidence. It ain't about, opinion and this. And it's not my opinion. I'm laying it out there. 5 times he had to overcome. Call it what you want. Dig down, whatever you want to call it. He couldn't do it. He didn't do it. The great fighters do it. He's not a great fighter that way. He was a great talent. There's a difference. But not a great fighter. He was a meteor, Chris, that came across the sky that doesn't come across that often. And it was sensational. It was blazing. Meteors are blazing. It was bright. It was brilliant. Meteors are brilliant. And then it burnt out. It was a meteor. Joe Louis, Muhammad Ali, Marciano, whichever one you want to, go down a great list. There's been so many great ones. Joe Frazier, whatever. But they were planets because they stayed. They didn't disintegrate. They didn't burn up. They stayed. They had substance. They had whatever it is that constituted greatness. They had that staying power to be a planet, to hang around, to overcome all the things out there in the galaxy that you have to overcome. He didn't have that. He didn't have it. So, again, a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, you're not giving me what I want, because they want, and I'll tell you who wants it. If you look, it's curious, and it's easy to figure out. It's the people that were around when he was around, because we all have that in us where we want to say we were around during Jimi Hendrix, Louis Armstrong. Oh, man. Louis Armstrong was great. I wish I was around when he was around, and I could have sat there and saw him actually do it instead of listening to it on just on a record or something. But you want to be around, and that's a lot of people that will say, no, he was this. No, they don't want to hear that, because that's their guy. That's the guy that they want to say, I was around when this guy was around, knocking everyone out. And if he didn't get screwed up, he would have broke Marciano's record. He would have knocked everyone. But no, because he didn't have that. If he didn't have the power or the speed, take one of those attributes away, nobody's going to argue that he's not a great fighter right away. So you're right that he's not a great fighter. He's not great. Okay. If he doesn't have that element, that attribute, that ability that makes you overcome things, it's the same thing, baby. It's the same thing. It's just that it's not one of those neon talents that makes us comfortable. Because who talks about being dependable as a talent? Let me tell you something. Michael Jordan, if you go back and watch that documentary, that's what he was. There were other guys out there that were just as good physically. People say, oh, Teddy, come on, Air Jordan, dude. Yeah, there were guys that were just as good. But they didn't have that, all of it. He had that talent to be dependable, to find a way, to overcome, to deal with resistance. Yeah. And if you take that out, boom. Just like if you took the power, no argument. Oh, he's no good. Well, you take that out, he's not great. You're not great without it.